All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Also here, my good friend, over there in the Midwest now, not the Southwest, in Colorado, Corban Ford of Swish Theory. Corban, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well, my friend. Just lovely Sunday. Lost track of the days for a second there, but can't just living life out here, man.
I know it's easy to. I love. I mean, just when you do get older, it really is to. It's so easy to lose track of days, time, anything like that. I mean, we're almost done with July. Like, it's insane that August is what, Tuesday?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. First of the month, Tuesday. Wild.
It's crazy. It is crazy, Corbin. But do you know what else is crazy? The NBA. You
What?
know what's funny is we're doing an NBA pod tonight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like we're the only one not. Maybe I'm just the only one not taking a break over these last few weeks of July into early August, because there's not a lot of NBA content out right now. Like, everyone after Summer League ended kind of was like, hey, no big trades are happening. Jaylen Brown got the mega extension, the Supermax, but outside of that, it's been pretty quiet, and I think a lot of folks are getting away. But unfortunately, I don't do that, and I am always working in a multitude of contexts, and I'm always thinking about the NBA, and I always want to talk about the NBA. And
Love it.
I think you're probably wired the same way, where you're watching clips. I mean, last week, or I guess it was 2 weeks ago, you were just watching random games from way back in the day. Have you been doing that this week, Corbin? Have you stumbled into some 2012 OKC Thunder tape?
You know, it's funny. I have not as of yet, but I will be getting into that. Only because I'm doing another separate podcast project with my friend Gary Bouguet called The Best of the Rest, and we are ranking every team that hasn't won the championship, like contending teams from like the 1970s, and putting them in this like round of 64, round of whatever. So like, for example, like we're doing a podcast this week. First shout out to Garrett Bouguet and Duncan Dynasty. But like the first round we'll be talking about is 1 versus 16 matchup. We did it by record and strength of competition, all that. The 97 Jazz versus the 2015 Blazers, the 2009 Cavs versus the 88 Jazz, the 96 Sonics versus the 84 Knicks, and the 2018 Rockets versus the 1999 Knicks. And like, these are just hypothetical. We already have it branched out in terms of like 7-game series, first 2 games at 1, and we're going by the rules of that year. So it only comes up like the 76 Suns versus the 93 Suns or something. But it's cool. So I will be doing some weird, it'll scratch the itch of like going into the weeds of the NBA draft, NBA history content.
There you go. That's fun. I like it. Also, I was listening to the Locked On Hawks when I was doing laundry earlier, and one of the things they casually dropped was that like there's a rumor going around that like we're a couple days away from Kobe Buffkin being trade eligible, where it's like some of those guys who were just drafted, there's a certain timeline. So it's like, yeah, nothing's happened with the Pascal Siakam trade or anything. There's nothing new in some of this stuff, but I wonder if that's part of it. And I hadn't even considered, because I just moved on from Pascal ever being an option for Atlanta and what that trade would look like. But it's like, could that actually be? He had a rough summer league, but still early. But Kobe, I wasn't really all in on. I just combo guards who don't have a path to real playing time on a team that's trying to win now is just, yeah, we'll see. Like, he's a guy. We'll see. I said that Seth Lundy, I would guess, makes an appearance in Quinn Snyder's rotation first this season over Kobe would be my guess, but I don't know. We shall see, Corbin. Speaking of things we shall see, I'm curious. There was a really good piece in Celtics blog this week. Very good website over there on SB Nation. But it highlighted the Boston new big three. Marcus Smart out. Kristaps Porzingis in. Jaylen Brown obviously not going anywhere. Jason Tatum obviously not going anywhere. And Malcolm Brogdon not ending up in the move. But it's going to be a very different kind of big three, where Marcus Smart was kind of the quarterback for this team and kind of the heart and soul of the Celtics for nearly a decade in Boston. And it's going to be a very, very different team. There's no way to sugarcoat that. But I really enjoyed this piece because it made me think, like, really, what is going to happen here? Because they have 3 All-Stars entering their prime right now, and I should also mention Grant Williams also out, who became an important player for them. But Kristaps Porzingis quietly had a high usage last year. He was 27% usage rate. It was him, Kuzma, and Beal did a lot. The team wasn't very good, but Kristaps had kind of a career resurgence in Washington after it looked like things may have just gone too far off the rails with his injuries and everything else. But now that you've had some time to think about it, with Robert Williams still being a huge X factor and unknown, Al Horford being the model of consistency there, with the new faces, with just kind of how Brad Stevens has reallocated his resources here and shuffled this lineup for Joe Mazzulla going into year 2. What are you thinking about this fit with KP, with Tatum and Brown, and no Marcus Smart at this point? Are you cautiously optimistic?
Sort of. I mean, I definitely like the fact you have 3 like main offensive hubs, and like 2 of them in Brown and Tatum can be, relied upon to do some additional like playmaking. I do wonder though. I mean, you had a guy in Marcus Smart. He wasn't like your, I guess, like what you would think a traditional point guard, but he did a lot of the offense running responsibilities, in terms of getting people into their sets and all sorts of things. And Jason Tatum has grown tremendously in that regard. And to a lesser extent, I would say Jaylen Brown has as well. But now, those 3 are going to have the ball. And it's unlike other big threes we've seen before where the other guy can like proficiently just run the offense, whether it was LeBron, D Wade, and then Bosh, or even this current Suns big 3 between KD, Booker and Beal. I would say this big 3 is more akin to the Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett big 3 in the sense of like these 3 guys can all score the basketball, all bring something to the other end in various capacities, but like none of those guys are like, all right, we're going to play through you in the way of like you can initiate the offense, get into sets. Pierce could do some of that, but Ray Allen wasn't doing that at all. And KG, maybe, this wasn't Minnesota KG, so he wasn't doing it either. And so when you look at, Tatum, Porzingis and Brown, all those guys are better creating their own shot with the ball in their hands. Or, in Porzingis' case, getting it in pick and pop opportunities and the like. So I wonder how it's all going to blend together and how the other guys will eat, like you said, a Robert Williams or a Robert Williams or a Derek White and a Malcolm Brogdon. Those guys can score. Those guys, even then, are more combo guards, like point guards, but they're there. So I wonder if, the fact that you have a more, let's say you're trying to go with the Democratic offense, right? And you have all these guys who can fill up the bucket really well at all 3 levels, that you just find a guy to get just enough movement from these guys to put together an offense that works. I think it's definitely going to be more of a player heavy offense instead of a system. But we'll see what Coach Joe Mazzulla decides to do.
Yeah, it's going to be really weird because Marcus Smart had so many just distributor responsibilities, right? And he was kind of like, there's so many memories of him taking important shots late in big games. And we saw it, in the Philly series and the other ones. Like, I feel like the other part of this is like, they must really believe in Derek White, right? Like he's going to have a huge responsibility going forward. Would that be your guess?
I would say so, yes. That
Mm.
that would be my thought. I mean, it have to be because you can't really rely on Brogdon with his injury history. I mean, as good as a player as he is, and he is a good player, to be like, all right, here, this is what we're going to do. I don't think that's a wise decision. But at the same time, given where they are right now, yeah, I mean, he is a guy that when he's healthy, will play well. And in the meantime, between time, yeah, you're looking a lot from Derek White. And Derek White, I would say, is a decent at handling and passing the ball, but I just always thought of him more of a combo guard. He's played point guard for sure parts of the season, point guard, shooting guard, small forward, combo kind of guard. But you're right, like in terms of dictating the offense, if it hits a jam, I do wonder. You see Tatum have just historically bad, not historically bad, that's a little dramatic, but really bad starts from the field
Mm.
for the first half or the game. Like just really come out the gate and not have anything going. We've seen Jaylen Brown. I mean, he can't dribble with one hand, basically. Like one direction is almost cut off to him. And then Porzingis, I mean, the dude is 7'2". Like it's only so much he's capable of doing with the ball in his hands too. He's someone that to a lesser extent is still reliant on the talent around him. So yeah, I think it has to go to the only guy who can create. Robert Williams is a fine player, fine finisher, but like also not a guy like I give it to him, let's make it happen. Although he's really intriguing with some offense off the dribble handoff situations and things of that nature. But that's not going to run your whole offense for 35 minutes a game. So I do think a lot of it goes to Derek White.
Did you think they were? Do you think there was too much made about their offense being too perimeter oriented last year? It did feel like they took a lot more threes and were kind of more of a live and die team from deep. Did you notice that night in, night out, a humongous change than what they were 2 years ago when they made the finals?
I mean, I didn't notice it as much. I mean, all those guys did bomb threes. I mean, even
Mm,
Smart of not being a very, I would say a great 3-point shooter, that he still will take a lot of threes. You know what I mean? I think he has like a Celtics record of threes made in the game, and he's not what you would consider a sharp shooter from there, So I mean, they probably got more dependent on that because, Tatum can at least get into that anytime he wants to. Jaylen Brown could get into that and actually loves the pull up three, whether or not it actually loves him back. There are certain situations where these guys, that's their comfort spot. Like I can see Porzingis putting up 6, 7 threes a game. Like that's what they're comfortable doing. Now, whether or not they should be, like therein lies the question. But like
mm.
I feel like their offense has always been rather three happy. It's not like back in the 2018 Rockets level of it, but they rely on that. They generate open looks that way. They generate contested looks that way. Like that's something that they've done.
Is there anything specific that Jason Tatum's still missing to be maybe the best player in the NBA? What would it take for him to actually get to number one, where he's been like fourth, fifth best seasons? He's somewhere in that category. I mean, you can make the case he's been the best wing, right? Like in the last 2 years, like you could throw that out there. I mean, Jokic. It's been the bigs who have dominated the MVP discussion with Jokic, Embiid, and Giannis. But is there anything remaining that you see that Jason Tatum could still get better at to put him in a situation where he is looked at as just the best player in the East, and it's not even a question.
I would say improving more as like a primary offensive initiator.
Hmm.
That's one thing I would say because he's gotten definitely better there, but that's still not. I would say he was definitely better there. I just don't know if I'd say he's like fully comfortable there all the way
Hmm.
yet, right? Because you look at a guy like a LeBron or a Paul George, Jimmy Butler, like those type of players who you can run the offense through consistently. There's some nights we saw Jason Tatum in the playoffs, I think, have a really big second half or fourth quarter, particularly after shooting like something like 7 to 21 or 6 to 21. He has a lot of slow starts, like bad starts too. And because he relies on his jumper a lot, if it's not going down, I mean, he can get to the rim, but like he relies on the jumper. And if it's cold, it's cold. So I would say just stringing together more consistency would be big. And then also being a guy that, hey, he can be like our primary offensive hub. So like between Jaylen Brown and between Porzingis and whichever guard you have alongside those guys, along with your big, you can give the ball to, Tatum and say, here, get us into our offense, run our sets, like get people involved in addition to your scoring and make that happen. And I think he's gotten better like every year. It's not either or. Like now he's kind of mixing both together, but he can definitely step up in that regard. And then defensively, like he's not horrible there, but can definitely improve.
What do you think their best five is going to be? Because it's interesting to think with their new options that Joe Mazzulla is going to be able to mix and match with Robert Williams, Horford, and KP. But like, I was thinking about that today. Like, what do you actually think is going to be their best five? What do you think will end up having the best net rating and being the most important clutch moment when the game's in the line in big playoff moments this year? What do you think it's going to be?
I mean, I think it's their projected starting five.
Hmm.
I mean, because at the end of the day, I mean, Derek White, good defender
Hmm.
at the guard spot, right? I would look at him as better defender than Brogdon.
Yeah.
Um, Knock down shots, make big shots. It's kind of a low key history of doing that over the last couple of years and good performances. So he's your guard. Jaylen Brown, not moving him anyway. He's probably playing your two. Boom. Then your three is Jason Tatum. Boom. Four, Porzingis,
Okay.
probably, and then you put Williams at the five because he brings that extra defensive stoutness, to be able to actually run the back end of the Celtics defense, clean up others' mistakes. Not there'd be many if all those guys are really locked in. And then Porzingis, of course, balancing the floor on the offensive end. You have a guy in Tatum who can take advantage of mismatches and hard closeouts or soft, really, with ways he's able to get to the basket with his one hand, right? You have Tatum who's kind of a do everything utility offensive player. Derek White being able to knock down shots. Robert Williams with the dribble handoff game and ability to finish above the rim in the pick and roll situation. And then, of course, Porzingis being able to stretch the deep. Like all of that together, that's probably your best combination. I could see you making a case for Brogdon with what he brings on the offensive end as well. But like I think Derek White brings you additional size and defense there. So I honestly think your projected starting lineup is probably your best. Is your closing five, it's your best unit. Good balance.
I like it. I want to get your perspective on this. So Mikal Bridges was on a pod this week. I think it was Paul George's pod, and he said on Ben Simmons, who I just completely forgot is still a Brooklyn net, right? Like I just look at it as like he's a free agent and people are just waiting to give him a workout later and see whenever his back's right or whatever. But like he's still a member of the Nets and it's just easy to forget that. But Mikal, who had a great second half with Brooklyn down the stretch there, and I'm a big Mikal guy, and I think you are as well. And he has a good sense of humor about the KD trade, where it's like, well, it's not going to be Booker, it's not going to be Chris. Like, I appreciate that. Like being
The
like,
candidness, yes, the candor.
yeah, like I like that. But he said Ben is my guy, man. I got confidence. I got big faith in him this year. Bridges told George on on the podcast piece show. And so Nets Daily pulled this together, these quotes, and I think he also said, quote, his back was messed up. Now that he's got surgery and he's getting back, he loved the game, bro. I think he's in a good place. F's with all of us like we're close. He's the one talking in the chat all the time, and we F with him. When you look at Brooklyn's roster going into next year, if you were to make the case that Ben Simmons gets back to being an important on-court figure, cog on a good NBA team, I think you could sell me on like the current Brooklyn situation being kind of that situation that you would be looking for at this point, where we talked about the Dame trade or sending, like if you did move Ben Simmons, where could you move him to? And one of the things about Brooklyn or Portland that always made sense was like he can just go away and just they're on a team that is not very like it's just a different market. The Portland market will it will just be nice. He can kind of go away and get better and see what happens to not be out of the spotlight, be out of a big market, whether it's Philly, Brooklyn, whoever. Like just get away for a little bit and just play basketball and work through your mistakes and everything else. But Brooklyn now is in that Kenny Atkinson era that we got to, where they went back and it's just they have a bunch of players that we like. The Cam Johnsons, the Mikal Bridges, they're everywhere. Just a bunch of solid NBA role players to, I mean, Mikal's case probably like maybe like I would say like Chris Middleton on a title team. Like maybe that's his upside where he's a number 2 for an elite big in today's game. Like he could be a number 2 there on a championship team, but not the best player on a championship team. But that's okay. Brooklyn is in that spot right now. This does feel like, I'm not saying I'm going to go out and believe this, but when I look at this roster and I look at their current situation and there not being any pressure to win now and not being any pressure for Ben Simmons to live up to what it says on his contract, I do kind of see where Mikal is coming from. And maybe there is some reason to believe that he could surprise some people and find his way back onto the court and be an interesting figure with this group of young Nets. What do you think?
I mean, it's possible. I don't know. Well, like if I had to pick the odds, I don't know how like optimistic I would be about that, but at the same time, like, yeah, it's certainly a thing. I mean, if you look at it, it is a different Brooklyn Nets team. It is more of a Kenny Atkinson team, which, mind you, big market, still get some attention. I think Ben Simmons likes some of the attention anyway, but also like the expectations are different. And for that, like you're going to see their ESPN games probably get slashed in half, right? Like they're not as exciting. You'll probably see them on NBA TV once or twice on TNT. Okay, maybe 4 or 5 times. But like the point being, like they're not that big a team. So some of the spotlight will be off of it. It's different when you have a Kevin Durant and a Kyrie Irving. Remember, James Hart was traded for him. So like you have these bigger names swirling around, of course it's going to be a lot more attention, but now the expectations have lightened. And yeah, you could kind of think about an idea where Ben Simmons, okay, focus on running the floor, pushing the pace, kicking the ball around shooters, maybe getting back to some of that defensive tenacity you had back in Philly when you were a rising star, a little bit of everything, kind of get back to you and maybe not even be old Ben Simmons, just be the guy who is a solid player to a team that is trying to see who they are, and that makes sense. You have a team right now trying to figure out who they are. You have a player in Ben who's trying to figure out who he is. So like, let that be learning for everyone. I think that's the potential there. I don't know if I buy it. Like the mentality looks gone, man. Like he's looked. I mean, if you're not doing it, and there's been players who do that. The lights are brightest and they kind of fly away, and then the lights go off, and it's like, hey, we're back, we're good. I was thinking Ramon Sessions, like with the Lakers, just horrible. And the next year, I went to Charlotte and was very solid. It's like, oh, all right, it's a comfort zone. Not everyone's built for that, and that's fine. So we'll see for Ben Simmons. The thing is, he was in one of the tougher areas in Philly doing it. So we'll kind of see. I'm not overly optimistic that that's the case. I really think he's kind of done. But at the same time, the blueprint is there for him to play that way. And now he's on a team where he will have more of that. He wasn't, you weren't doing that when KD handled the ball as much as he did in Kyrie. That took away some of Ben's strengths, and the way he was playing defensively with his back and everything was not great. So maybe we go away from point center, Simmons and C, but also like Jacques Vaughn didn't seem the biggest fan of his, So I mean, at the end of the day, you still gotta I'm glad Mikal Bridges likes you, but there's a coach who's gonna play you. So we'll see how his role fits there.
When you think Cam Johnson, do you think Nick Claxton, do you think Mikal Bridges, and you think Spencer Dinwiddie, and then you throw in Ben Simmons in that foursome? Like, let's say Dorian Finney-Smith is out one game, he's hurt, whatever. Does that starting five work for Ben to be effective? Is that the kind of roster you would have around Ben Simmons?
I mean, I like to maximize the shooting. I think you have a guy in Dinwiddie who's not the best shooter, who will need the ball in his hands a little bit. And then a guy in Claxton who needs to be on the floor as well, but also like a non-shooter. So the floor will be kind of cramped a little bit. I think you want a little more spacing there. Personally, around Ben, whether it's an all 5 out or whatever, and if he gets some size there, great. So he can actually like have guys to like rebound stuff with, but also be the primary guy. As far as Mikal and Cam, like those are the type of players I think can play in anybody. But I also think that they will work well alongside Ben because defensively they can hold their own their position. They space the floor out very well, and also they're not really big on-ball guys. Mikal Bridges definitely grew a lot on his on-ball handling chops this past year, but like in general, that's not really his game yet, and maybe it is now. And if so, him and Ben could take turns. But as it stands, that would give Ben the on-ball reps he needs to maximize his effectiveness on the offensive end. Defensively, he has some additional help. He's not the last line of defense, and he can also bring his talents to bear when it comes to rebounding as well and pushing the pace. So I definitely think a lineup like that is similar. Let's just maybe get a 5 with some more space or go small ball and try to see if that works out.
Do you think we're headed towards a scenario where the Donovan Mitchell trade's one of the worst trades in the last 20 years?
I think it's too early to tell. I don't know. Like, I mean, as of right now, like if you look at the Cavs, I mean, if you look at the Jazz, like they're still in the midst of it. They haven't really reaped any of the rewards yet. I mean, Larry Markkinen's
he was an all-star.
Yes, but like, I mean, I haven't like there's no playoffs, there's nothing there. Like it's good for it's a feather in his cap. That's great. But like it's not like you're looking at him going, oh wow, like great. The Jazz are back in relevancy. Almost like when Gordon Hayward left Utah for Boston, and then Donovan Mitchell came to Utah, and then they were in the playoffs, and it was like, oh well, Jazz actually did pretty good in this. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't even a trade, but just something like that. So with the Jazz haul, I mean, you have Colin Sexton. You can say results were mixed at best his first year in Utah. Larry Markkinen, all-star, great individual year, good moments in Utah. Great to have an all-star in Utah during that. But like aside from that, I mean, no. Ochai Agbaji, definitely like him as a player. Haven't seen anything just yet. Your 3 first-round picks are still 2 years away from conveying the earliest. You have the 2025 first-round pick. Then you have 2026 pick swap, 2027 first-round pick. Then you have another pick swap, and you have the 2029 first-round pick. So, like, you haven't seen the payoff on the draft capital just yet. And as of now, like, I get it. Donovan Mitchell not signed the extension is there, but he could easily just re-sign later. And as of right now,
I think that's part of it, right? That's part of my calculus. So, to this point, Larry Markkinen, all-star right out of the gate. And like you said, the picks haven't conveyed yet, so we can't go down that road. But you got just blasted by the Knicks in the first round last year. Jared Allen couldn't play. You look at it, maybe he gets moved this year, and you have to eventually slide Evan Mobley to the 5. But the combination of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell made sense. Like, I'm not even going against the Cavs thinking here, where like you kind of do something. They were someone, I think we talked about in this very program, they were good at everything. Like, this was a very good regular season team. It was a roster that made a lot of sense. They had a good offseason. They have a lot of different options that they're going to throw at the 3 to surround Garland, Allen, Mobley, and Mitchell this year. It wasn't like Mitchell and Garland are a bad fit. They work really well together. Like, this all should theoretically work, but like what happened was they got beat by the Knicks in really embarrassing fashion, with the lights getting too bright for certain players in that series. And then you go into next year, it was like, okay, well, that was a good moment for you guys. And I mean, the Bucks were knocked out in the first round. There was an opening, like the East looked pretty. I mean, the Heat as a bottom seed makes it to the NBA Finals. Like, you wonder a little bit? It's like, do you miss your moment? And now there's just so much pressure on what the Cavs do this year, because if you get beat again early in the postseason, like that looks bad for your long term Donovan Mitchell stock. Like, you want to get that deal done sooner rather than later. And then you have to go into this whole year, because guess what the questions are going to be? If the Cavs are like trending towards the 5th and 6th seed, something like that for next year, you got to trade Mitchell before you lose him for nothing. Like, you have to do this or you have to do that. And then if that's the case, then all you have to show for it is all these gone picks, Lauri Markkanen out the door, and no playoff series victories. Like, that's where things are trending right now. And I get it. You take a big swing, you're Cleveland. You're not going to get first round. Like, LeBron is from your area. Outside of that, it's just going to be always difficult to get NBA free agents, big time free agents, to sign with Cleveland as unrestricted free agents. But that 2025 first round pick, the pick swaps in 26 and 28, like, there's a path where the Cavs could get really bad really quickly. Like, that future haul could be devastating to Cleveland. And I think there's just going to be so much pressure on Cleveland this year. And I think they could be really good, but I feel bad for those fans, because they're just going to go into every game like, oh, like, we got to do this or we got to do that. And they're going to get tired of everyone being like, you got to trade Mitchell so you don't lose him for nothing. And everything's going to be like, he's going to New York. He's going to New York. And it's also like, I don't like the Knicks fit. Like, I don't think him and Brunson actually work all that well together. I think him and Garland are actually better fits, but I understand, like, him being from New York wants to go there. But, like, if I'm the Knicks, I don't necessarily want to sign long term to a Mitchell Brunson defensive backcourt. That's just me. And I'm sure Tibbs probably doesn't really want to do that. But I don't know. What do you think? What would you do? Like, if the Cavs are, let's say, in the 7th seed around the trade deadline, do you just ride it out with Mitchell and hope or do you just trade him for something to a contender and try and recoup some of those picks you're going to end up losing?
I mean, I wait till next year. You are still in position right now where you could do some more winning this year. I mean, the Cavs made some side improvements. Do you see him in the championship contender this year? I don't know this upcoming year, compared to 2024. But bottom line, like, he's not gone until 2025, right? Summer 2025. If he's gone, like, if he is, as Tim Bontemps said, then he's gone 2025. That's still like 2 years from now, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, 1 year from now, if you're really trying to get maximum value, but you're trying to get value for a player like Donovan Mitchell, especially if you trade him to a team he wants to re-sign, right? Like, I don't think a team's gonna be like, nah, we'll just wait for him in the offseason. I mean, they might, but like, the Knicks won't. I think that you'll be able to reap some value. Will it be the massive haul that you had to give up? Probably not. But like, also doesn't make any sense, because if you were to do that, then you trade him this offseason, and then you traded all of that for 1 year Donovan Mitchell because you're worried that he won't re-sign 2 years from now. No, like, at least give it 2 years, see what you go from there. I think also, like, if you look at it, the Cavs are fine. I think that you still, like, moving Mitchell's not like losing LeBron. Darius Garland signed through 2028. Evan Mobley signed through 2029. Like, he's going to outlast the picks that they gave up. You know, Jared Allen's contract for 2026, that will at least keep them competitive. Remember, they were competitive before they traded for Donovan Mitchell, right? Mm-hmm. Also, in terms of paying out future contracts, they're in good shape. They have expiring contracts for the next 4 years that will open up some room, whether that's Jared Allen, Karis LeVert, don't forget Max Strus. And, you know, that can help them in re-signing current players or improving a free agency. So, I don't know. I think that eventually it might be something you consider. I'm not saying let him go for nothing, but like, I don't think it's like panic time just yet. In the NBA transaction circus, I imagine that it is part of that. But as of right now, no, like, you are good. The problem the Cavs are going to have right now is improving through their draft, because they don't have picks, right? So they're not going to be able to get young talent back from that because of everything they're giving to Utah or swapping with Utah. And they don't have their upcoming first round pick they didn't have their upcoming first round pick because they had traded that to Indiana for Karis LeVert. So, like, yeah, but at the same time, considering the young guys they have in place, maybe you could say they don't need to get more younger players. I think they're in a good position with a core that will be there for a couple of years. It's locked down. That's with or without Donovan Mitchell, and with those guys locked in and with the flexibility they could have moving forward, other players want to sign there. You know, they'll be able to make other trades. They'll be able to get other players there in free agency, I think, that will keep them competitive. And
So
also,
you think they
I'm
would
not.
go into next year with him being a player option? He could leave after the following year. You think he would just ride it out and
I'm
just
riding
whatever
it out.
happens
I
happens?
mean, I'm also not particularly sold on Donovan Mitchell being like a winning player.
Mm.
Like that's my own opinion. Like, all right, cool. Like, go to New York and what? Like I'm not.
If he was a Laker, what would you say though? You say all
Yo,
this, but if
I
he,
love him, but
yeah,
also that's not. I mean, I have to say
LeBron finding him in the corner, LeBron setting him
it'd be
up for the,
nice,
yeah,
but like I just don't think he's like the main. Like, here's the thing. I think he's a solid player. If he goes to LA, he's the third best player.
yeah, oh for
Like he's
sure,
not better than Anthony Davis. He's not better than LeBron, and that's what I mean. Like he's
yeah.
not your best player, and if he is your best player, I don't expect you going far in Cleveland.
Is he better than Jamal
Cleveland's
Murray?
That's a good question.
I don't. I think I would take
I
Murray.
I, I think I'll take Murray too.
But remember that amazing back and forth they had in the bubble?
They did. I just think Murray does more on ball
Yeah,
than Mitchell does. Defensively, they're
I
both
think
kind
he's
of a
also a
wash.
better shooter.
That as well. Yeah. So I would go Murray.
Yeah,
I just Mitchell's fine. He's a good player. I just like we're talking. He's probably one of the best players in Cleveland, which is why I don't think they win a championship. But like
yeah. Well, I think that's
I
the other part of this, right? Which is
mhm.
if Evan Mobley becomes the best player on Cleveland, that changes all this calculus.
That
Like if
totally
Evan
does.
Mobley
And
takes a step, which is what everyone in Cleveland has to be banking on, like he's the forgotten
mm-hmm.
piece in all this. Like if Mobley takes the step, that's what changes everything. That's how you get Donovan Mitchell locked in. Is like, oh, I now have a franchise Kevin Garnett anchor inside who can play the five now. He can defend five. Like that we have our Giannis, Jokic, whoever, like the next great big in the NBA who can do it all. Like that I think is the most important thing to happen in Cleveland over the next 2 years is just like what Evan Mobley is ensuring his development gets him to where he needs to go because I think there's more riding on him than Garland, than Max Strus, than Jared Allen and Donovan Mitchell. It's Evan Mobley and what he becomes because if Evan Mobley becomes what he's capable of, the Cavs are a real long-term contender in the East. If he doesn't, it just it gets pretty dicey in a hurry here for everybody involved.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, I agree with you completely. So that's that. Yeah, I definitely think it's one of those things that can go shaky fast. And mind you, I'm not saying Cleveland's in a position of strength right now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think it's a position of weakness either. Like you traded all those stuff for him. You didn't do it for just 1 year. If you trade him this year, then you weakened. And yeah, you may not get a great haul back, but you would get something back if you wait till next year to trade him. Like we've seen players now. I mean, get traded. You'll get something back for him. And if that's worth another year of seeing what you can maximize with this, Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, Allen core, then you go for it. I don't think that's really anything to think about between that. So yeah.
I like it. Corban. Chris Duarte to the Kings. Harrison Barnes signs an extension. We were wondering what his future looked like. They get a big EuroLeague star. But outside of that, they're going to run it back with Domantas Sabonis, who also got paid. Him and De'Aaron Fox have a great connection. They break through in the playoff drought this past year in Sacramento. When you look at the Kings in their offseason, do you think it was a relative win here? Are you excited at what they've done, kind of just adding some more depth, bolstering them in that regard, and what they're going to look like going into next year, and if they're going to be able to run it back and be just as good as they were in the regular season this past year?
I think so. I mean, I don't know if they demonstrably improved their defense, which I think was kind of their issue big time, ultimately. But in terms of their offense, that's spruced up. That's even more deadly, even more weapons, for De'Aaron Fox to use, and even more versatile in that way. And if you think another year improvement, De'Aaron Fox just 25. You know what I mean? Like Keegan Murray had a very strong year last year, 22. Domantas Sabonis is no, old guy either at 27. Like these guys are still young. There's still room for them to grow. And I do like those moves. I'm a big fan of Chris Duarte. I think he's a little bit older, but fits their range in terms of that 25, 26, 27 type player.
Yeah. Basically Kevin Huerter, just a variation of Kevin Huerter.
Exactly. I think maybe more on-ball juice, Kevin Huerter. I don't know, but boom, I like what they did there. I like their new guard. I think it's pretty solid. I think that they did a really good job of amplifying their strengths. I will say that. I don't know if they've covered their weaknesses well enough. But then again, Sacramento's never been known as a defensive juggernaut, so maybe it's overrating it, right? But no, I think ultimately they are pretty solid. definitely another team I think will make the playoffs again. So
they're like 10, 11 deep. I'm curious how they do this rotation because somebody's going to I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. I think it's going to be very fascinating.
They got Nerlens Noel for their defense too. My bad, I forgot.
Yeah.
So Nerlens Noel is somewhat good defensively. I will say that. But like they're and Alex Len is back and he's decent defensively. But they're good. And yeah, let's not forget, like you said, Sasha Venzikov, 6'9", NBA ready, EuroLeague MVP. Like, yeah, it's gonna be nice. I like it. If you look at like their rotation, we talked about it. Point guard, De'Aaron Fox, backup Davion Mitchell. Shooting guard, Kevin Huerter, backup Malik Monk. Small forward, Harrison Barnes, backup Chris Duarte. Power forward, got Keegan Murray, Sasha Vezenkov, and then Trey Lyles. Center, DeMontis Sabonis and Alex Len. And you still have Kessler Edwards, Nerlens Noel, Colby Jones, and your two-way players. You said it. They're 11 deep there. And they have amazing depth at the power forward position. Some guys at the 3 could play the 4. Some guys at the 4 would probably play the 3 a little bit in bigger lineups, right? Monk, heat up in a hurry, could play both guard spots. Davion Mitchell, pitbull defensive guard, right? Duarte, shooter off the bench. Venzikov, shooter off the bench, and probably do a little bit more. Alex Len can still get valuable minutes when his size needed. Like, they're in a very good position. I think that they'll win the NBA Cup.
Oh my God. That's going to be so weird. Oh my God. I'm not ready, Corban. I'm really not ready. I'm not ready. That would be a Kings thing, though, for them to be the first winners of the NBA Cup.
Right, there you go. It would. No one could take that away from them.
Well, the thing too to remember about the Clippers, so they won 48 games last year, nearly 53 seed. Here are the teams that made the playoffs last year in the West: the Grizz, the Nuggets, the Kings, the Suns, the Clippers, Warriors, Lakers, T-Wolves, and then Pelicans and Thunder rounded out 9-10. The only teams that I can definitively say are not going to make the playoffs next year: the Jazz, the Blazers, the Rockets, and the Spurs. I find it very hard to believe that Mavericks don't make it back to the postseason with a full season of Luka and Kyrie. I think they bolstered their depth a little bit. I think they're just too good. Like, they're going to find their way back in the postseason. Someone's got to fall out. The Kings, I'm just looking over. I'm like, the Warriors aren't falling out. The Lakers aren't falling out. The Clippers aren't falling out. The Suns definitely aren't falling out. The Nuggets definitely aren't. I'm kind of worried about where their record's going to be. Like, I'm kind of worried. I think what two things could be happen. They're just as good as last year, and yet they're a play-in team this year. And I wonder how it's received because the West is just so tough.
Are we sold on the Warriors?
Yeah, Steph playing, even if Steph plays 70 games, like they're playoff team, locked in, no question.
I mean, they're 44-38 last year with Steph playing a bunch of games.
Yeah, I mean,
and Steph is 35 now.
You just want to end the Warriors. You just want.
No. I was gonna make the same case for the Lakers. Actually,
I think their roster's better too. I don't know. There's no weird Jordan Poole stuff hanging over the team for a full year.
No, now you just gotta worry about 39-year-old
can
Chris
make a
Paul
jump,
and hoping those two make a jump finally after 3 years.
Maybe.
I'm just saying those guys hopefully making a jump and Chris Paul not being cooked. Like the Lakers, I like their depth a little better, but again, they only go they're better positioned to survive without LeBron AD, but they'll only go as far as LeBron AD will go. And AD will be 31, LeBron will be 39. Just concerns about that. Memphis, you're losing Ja for the first 25 games.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Marcus Smart is not going to help, but I don't think it's going to be like a perfect. They could have a slow start too. Who knows, right? Denver, I think, will be a solid regular season team. We'll see about the playoffs because losing, some of the depth that they did lose was important to me. So we'll see. The Suns, I actually don't know. Like, if they're healthy, then absolutely. But we're going on a 35-year-old Kevin Durant, a Bradley Beal who's been dealing with injuries the last couple of years, missing like dozens of games. Devin Booker's not beyond injury himself. We saw that last year. And then you don't have the players that can step up if those guys go down and go, okay, we got this. Like, we're going to write it out. No, I could definitely see them slipping a little bit. So, like, I think the only one I really can't poke holes in is really Denver. And the Clippers, I'm sorry. Wait, do we not realize they have Kawhi and PG? Like, those guys get injured. They're still deeper, but we saw last year the depth wasn't as good last year. The depth's a little older. What looked good in 2020 and 2021 doesn't look good in 2023. Nick Batum and Marcus Morris and all these guys. I'm sorry, like, I'm not sold either. I think health is going to be the big, like, barometer there. So I could totally see Sacramento making it there. One of those teams having a surprising slide that maybe we look back isn't so surprising, but, like, Look at it. The Warriors were 6th. The Lakers were 7th. Right? The Suns and Cavs were Suns and Kings separated by 3 games.
Yeah.
Only teams that made it over 50 wins in the West was the Nuggets and the Grizzlies. Like, I could totally see something like that happening. Health is something there, but no, I will go with your original opinion. All things being equal, if health was just good for everyone, no, you're probably right. I'm looking at the Kings, maybe, like you said, playing, and even then, like, where does OKC go? Where does New Orleans go? What happened to Minnesota? It's gonna be tight. It's gonna be fun to watch them again. I'm sorry, we didn't even mention one team that I expect to be good that dropped to 11th last year, Dallas.
Well, that's what I said at the top. It's like Dallas is a playoff team.
From the jump. I'm sorry. Yes, you did. So, like, let's not forget Utah. I'm just kidding. But
I mean, Utah's gonna be feisty. They're not gonna be bad. Like, Utah's going to. I think Keontae George is gonna be a really good player.
No, I love Keontae. I had him high on my list. So
he would have been Summer League MVP if he doesn't get hurt late, right? Like, he probably would have been Summer League MVP. Who even ended up winning? Who won it?
I mean, Evan Mobley's brother.
Who?
Wait, no, Summer League MVP. I was thinking of the championship game. Who won Summer League MVP? Was it Cam? I think it was Cam Whitmore.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Cam Whitmore.
Okay.
And then in the championship game, I forgot because Keegan Murray won last year, and Evan Mobley's brother won the MVP of the game.
Okay.
So remember 2012 co-MVPs were handed out to Damian Lillard and Josh Selby.
Josh Selby, man.
Shout out to him.
I love when people are like, it means nothing, and I'm like, well, there actually is a pretty good track record of guys who win Summer League MVP or actually do play well at Summer League. Generally speaking, there are the Josh Selbys of the world, and like Trae Young obviously having a pretty rough Summer League and he figured it out, but like that there's actually a pretty good track record if you play pretty well in Summer League. That's a good sign. Like, that is never, it's very rare that that's a bad sign for your NBA career, is if you're really good in Summer League right out of the gate.
No, exactly. It's not, oh, look out, the Summer League curse is not mad.
No.
So, like, I definitely agree with you. I think that it's one of those things that it translates, it doesn't mean it's end all be all, like, this is what it is, but it does portend well. You'd rather have that than they didn't play well in Summer League, because for whatever reason, like, that's more concerning. Look at Brandon Miller. I'm concerned about that. So no, I agree. I think that it does. Yeah, it's at least something.
I'm excited because there's going to be at least 2 teams that wind up in the play-in situation this year, and their fans are going to be upset because it's just the West is going to be too topsy-turvy. Like, it could be the Grizzlies, it could be the Lakers, but the Lakers, it doesn't really matter. I think the fans are like, we don't really care. If we're healthy come playoff time, like, we can win the West. Like, I don't really care if we're a play-in team. But everybody else, you want to avoid that. You want to avoid that kind of grind and everything else. You don't want to go the path of the Lakers and the Heat if you can avoid it. But I do think there are going to be some teams that slide down in that category, because I think the Mavericks slide up. The Thunder are going to be right there. The Pelicans, probably the biggest question mark of all of those teams, because we've seen the best of the best and the worst of the worst there, health-wise with them and what that could mean for them. And like you said, just so much of this is going to come down to health. But man, the West is just going to be a bloodbath. Like, anyone who's predicting how the West is going to shake out going into next year already, good luck to you, man. Because, like, the East, it's, I think, pretty easy. Like, I think the East is down to 2 teams still. Like, I think there are only 2 teams that can win the East right now. It's the Bucks and the Celtics. That's
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
And let me throw in the caveat. Damian Lillard does get traded to the Heat. Okay. I'll throw the Heat in too.
I don't know. I think the depth is still kind of weak.
I think so too.
And Dame is your best player. We've seen that song before. Unless you want Jimmy Butler's your best player. We've also seen that. Although that gets you to the finals, but also it depends on the depth, or it looks really bad.
Can we say that? Like, it would be insane. I shouldn't say insane. It would be a gigantic surprise if the Celtics are not in the NBA finals next year. I think, for me. Yeah, health permitting.
They would have had, either bad health or something just fell apart.
And then the Bucks just ran it back, just with a new coach.
Although I wonder about injuries.
Yeah.
And also some of their guys are older now. Brooke will be 36. Chris Middleton battled injury, but also Lily took a step back last year. Only one I think that would get it better is Giannis, and that jumper hasn't gotten better.
Yeah.
But hasn't stopped him before. So I'm just saying things for the sake of being cynical here.
Oof. Corban Ford, what can the good folks check out from you across the internet this week?
First, just want to say, as always, thank you for having me on, my friend. Love talking ball with you. You can find me on Twitter at Corban NBA. I've dropped a little bit of a few pods here on Roundball Ramble, my main podcast. Going to be doing a fun draft project coming up here soon. And looking forward to that. And then hopefully getting some work together on Swish Theory. You can also find my work there when that drops. But just check out those guys in general. Like, it's a good group of folks, way smarter basketball minds than myself over there. Love their work and happy to even be able to put my name among the ranks there. But should be doing some front office retrospectives there soon as well.
There you go. Corban Ford, always a pleasure, my friend, and I will talk to you next week.
Thank you, sir.
Well done, nephew. Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.